Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Way We Grow podcast, where we talk about cultivation journeys. Today, our guest is DK Warren of Sugarship Cannabis Seeds. You can find him at sugarship.co or on Instagram at dk.warren or his Reddit account at u/general teesoo, all one word. My co-host today is Cosmic of CosmicStrains.com and at CosmicStrainsOfficial on Instagram and u/CosmicStrains on Reddit. And I'm your host, Nick Wolfe, or Mr. Wolf Grows on both Instagram and Reddit. And so I just wanted to introduce DK here. He is quite the amazing breeder. DK, how are you doing today?
And I appreciate that. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I know we've been chatting on various online forums and social medias for quite a while now, so it's good to finally meet you guys. Yeah, as we kind of talked about before we started the show, I've been a little bit sick, so kind of drank some meds and trying to power through this. But yeah, getting over the holiday hump and kind of just trying to get back to things and plan my next rounds and hunts and what's to come. So
What do
yeah,
you got going right now?
oh, right now, so I have a few things. So I every just about every run I have like three things going. I have like just plants I know are good, and I'm running for personal smoke and to gift to people and whatnot, just that I keep rerunning and kind of my staples. So I have a few of those going off the shelf. My Kepler 22B, which is about to be renamed, unfortunately, because somebody else used that name and it's gotten its way into the commercial space here in Denver, and people don't want to reuse it. So it's going to be called Astro Fruit. It's like the most bizarre smelling, fruity, bubblegummy, medicine smelling plant ever.
Nice.
I've kept it pretty close for a few years now, and I think I'm going to start letting people have that pheno. So I've already given it to a few commercial grows, as I mentioned, but yeah, every time I run it, it's like shocking. Super strong and keeps its terpenes really well in the jar. Like really, really powerful smells.
Is that
Um,
something that you hunted?
yeah, so I took everything I make, I hunt. Um, Very seldom do I use any clones to do any of my breeding. So I started with a great pupil from Mass Medical Strains, great pupil V2 that I hunted. Really cool plant, good effects. Didn't really have a great taste though. So I kept the mother around for a bit to do some breeding because it had some really special qualities, but didn't really check every box. I'm sure in his seeds there's other ones that taste delicious. This particular one I had just didn't. But so I bred that to Capulator's Miracle Grow, which is like he took, I think it's like 2/3 of what makes up Mac, the Miracle, and I can't remember all of it right now, and he crossed that to like an OG, I think. And so it's like a pre-Mac kind of the same Mac stuff, but without the cookies. And crossed that to that Great People V2, and it came out with this like really interesting, funky expressions of like bubble gums and really cool flavors, and natural foxtailing and stuff. So that's one of my coolest cuts that I'm like finally gonna let people get their hands on. I didn't. That was back when I was doing like branch pollinations and like much smaller seed runs. So like all of those are sold out, and I have like maybe 30 in a personal stash, but there's no way to buy those anymore. But like I said, the cut will get out there. So I have that going, and then a sister kind of, or like a cousin to that plant is my Black Canyon Kush that I always, just about every run, I run one of those because I like to smoke it. Um, Use that same Great People V2 mom and pollinated it with uh, Higher Vibe from Key Play, or I think he calls it Seed Business Keys to the Kingdom. Um, I used to test stuff for him, and whenever I would find something cool, I would breed with it. Um, Another really cool plant, crazy flavors, like berry, cushy nose, and like fun, playful effects. So that's always a staple in my runs. What else do I have that's like rerun? my critical level haze I always run really hazy, but like grows like a bush, so you can grow it indoors and only takes like 70 days. So I keep trying to find hazes. I keep running all these hazes, and they're like nightmare indoor plants. You have to like trigger them before everything else, and they outgrow everything, and they don't fit into your water schedules, and they don't fit into your tent heights. And it's like this, I want to grow the classics, and I want to grow hazes and sativas and stuff, and I keep trying, but it's like so challenging indoors. So when I found that critical Neville haze, it has like the classic spicy metallic smell in the grow, and then it cures into like an incensey hazy kind of nose, and it's really good, and the high is super high flying. Um,
Nice.
so, so I always kind of run some of that. Do you want me to go through all of them? I have like a ton of
No,
plants
no. I
going
mean,
right
I
now.
was, it's just kind of like interested in what's going on in your world, but it sounds like you got a lot, in terms of how much you have like going on at any one given time. Um,
Yeah.
so like, one of the first questions that I do like to ask is what got you into growing? Were you introduced into growing like vegetables or other plants as a young kid by a relative, or like what were some of the first plants that you ever grew, whether it be
Yeah.
cannabis or not?
Good call. So the first ones I ever grew was every year I used to grow like giant sunflowers next to my house with my mom. She would have her little garden going with like tomatoes and cucumbers and all that stuff. And for some reason, I became like the sunflower guy. And I would
Nice.
grow these like 12-foot sunflowers. I was always really proud of how big they would get. That was when I was like really young. But then in high school, my town that I grew up in is known for plant nurseries. And like basically, if there's not a house or a development, the land in my hometown is used for nursery growth. Primarily like ornamental landscaping type plants, um, not like for food really. It's not like apple orchards, and there are apple orchards and grapes and strawberries and stuff like that, but and vineyards. But the main all the hoop houses and like the main like many hundreds of acre cultivation is for like rhododendrons and arborvitae and various like the stuff you would buy at Home Depot, or like a plant outlet for your yard. So every summer, me and all my friends would work at these plant nurseries, and we would work um, in the clone barns or the propagation barns. We would basically in the mornings we would go out to the mother fields and take thousands and thousands of cuttings off the mother plants. It was primarily tree hydrangeas. So a lot of the work that I did was with cloning hydrangeas. So we would take the cuttings and go back to the barn and spend 10 hours just making clones, and then filling, 50, I think it was 50 slot flats, just like one after the next. We had a conveyor belt with the soil that filled the flats, and we'd sit there and dip the clones in a rooting hormone and just plug them, fill a trailer with them, trailer them out to the hoop houses, and then put them in the hoop houses. So that was
What
like
sort of
many. Go
what sort
ahead.
of medium were you using to clone with?
That was just. It must have just been a potting soil. I mean, I know it was like huge plastic wrap bales of it that come in on like palletized delivery. So somebody would take like a forklift, slit the plastic, hold it over the hopper, and just like dump a giant pallet of it must have just been some kind of potting mix with perlite. Um, I truly don't know. I was like you know, a 15-year-old kid at the time or whatever, but um, it was definitely a soil medium. I think I think they just used the same cloning medium that they used to up pot, and I don't think there was any like differentiation between like the start or you know, the next sizes as they went. So that was like years of doing that, and then some of the years I got into like um, potted farms. So we had farms that like would grow directly in the soil, farms that would grow hoop houses, and then farms that would grow in containers. And a lot of the work when in containers is like adding granular fertilizers and spacing plants, and just like in general maintenance and growing these plants, getting them ready for delivery and whatnot. So driving around on a tractor all day and just like bending over and moving plants around most of the time. So yeah, a lot of that, a lot of it was tree hydrangeas, but many other plants. So that was kind of like where my interest in cultivation and propagation began, and where I started to like learn about this stuff and see how it could be done. It's also basically where I got introduced to cultivating cannabis too, because we would find cannabis plants growing in the farms. A lot of the workers, the non-high school workers, they would plant, they would stash a plant somewhere here or there, and we would occasionally stumble across it, and I'd stick it in my car and drive it home and hide it in the woods behind my parents' house and hope for the best. So a lot
Like
of
dig it
the
up.
potted, we would find potted ones actually,
Oh,
just like
okay.
yeah, just like stashed in a bunch of
Oh,
like
so like for sure, not even just like a dropped seed or something. It was like
for
they were
sure on
taking care of
purpose.
it.
Like, because it wouldn't be on the perimeter. It'd be like in the interior, kind of like stashed away, and we'd stumble across it, and I would be like, "All right, I'm gonna leave for lunch break today," and run it back to my house and hope for the best. It was nothing, it was probably Mexican bag seed type stuff, and just plant what you got and hope for the best.
Around what
So
year was this?
this was probably '01,
Okay.
maybe. Yeah, that was kind of my tinkering days, was high school, nothing like of substance. There would be maybe like one mature cola on these plants that you could mess with, or I had some plants that were like looking really good, and one day I came home from work and they were uprooted and laying on my back porch. My dad had stumbled across them while he was doing some yard work or something, and just like grabbed it by the stem and yanked it up and laid it on the back porch. So I definitely had some trials and tribulations with those early ones, but that was all just like very low effort, you know, going and trying to water things, hoping you'd get a joint to smoke type of stuff. It wasn't until college that I like got a hold of some good genetics and like proper grow equipment and grew some, you know, some good fire. That was yeah,
Was
I can
that
tell
indoor then?
that story. Yeah, my first indoor experience, I can kind of
Yeah.
explain that. So I had some friends in college that were growing and had been growing for a few years, and somehow had got a hold of good, California and Canadian genetics, and train wreck was being grown, and blueberry and that type of thing. And then one of my friends that was growing was a web developer, and he developed like a website. I wish I knew the details of this, like who this was, but he developed a website for a Canadian seed maker. This is in 2004, maybe 2005. And in exchange for developing it, the guy sent him a ton of seeds. And so one of the strains was called Thor's Hammer, which I know there's like more than one of those today, so I don't think it's tied to any of the modern ones. But so one of the strains was Thor's Hammer that I grew first indoor, and the other one was called Monkey Snooze, which is a bizarre name. But um, basically, the guy was going through some problems with he was going through a divorce essentially, and they had a kid, and he was afraid that the wife was going to like use that grow against him in court, like, oh, like whatever. I don't know the details, but he was just nervous about it. So he called me and he's like, "Hey, I've got these plants that are like ready to flip to flower. Can you come pick them up?" So I threw them in my car and took him home, took his 400-watt HPS home. And they kind of escorted me to the hydro store to buy some nutrients. Maybe this is where I can get into like how I grow. Um, so we go to the hydro store, and they were like showing me all the Fox Farm stuff, and bottle nutrients. And the guy at the store was like, "Hey, this stuff is like the new thing. This is like, yeah, you guys should give this a shot if you're interested." And it was General Hydroponics Flora Nova. It's a one part for veg and one part for flower, and it's like mostly partially organic. I think it's like synganics people call it now, but it's very thick, like black tar. It's kind of like not tar, it's like mud kind of. Um, so tried it and loved it, and this is 20 something years ago, and I've literally been using the same stuff for 20 something
The
years.
Florinova.
It's called Florinova Grow and Florinova Bloom.
Wow.
You can add all kinds of other stuff with it. You know, you can mix in your Floralicious Plus and your whatever, but it's really all you need, to be honest with you. You can go from seed to harvest with that stuff. It's crazy.
But
And
anyway, so
it's,
you went to the hydro store though, got these new nutrients to go set up your first grow.
yep, yep. I get home, section off a piece of my closet with a blanket, I think, 400 watt super hot HPS in like a tiny closet with no proper exhaust, two plants, tripped them into flower, and then just like proceeded to go like way, way, way down the rabbit hole of learning. Got on Grass City forums and just started posting and reading and like just went way, way deep on everything you could do. I think at one point I was like spraying seltzer water on the plants because I read that that was like, good for stuff. I just started messing with everything, but those first two plants came out like phenomenal. Like the kids that I got them from were like shocked. They were like, holy shit. Like I didn't go through this like big, I stink at growing phase, I guess. I just kind of like got good premium flower like the first time I harvested, and then from there every run I did like my next setup was a little bit larger than that, but um I
How
just
many how many rounds did you run that first setup?
I think only one, because we ended up moving out of that house and I ended up moving out of that town and had to give that guy his equipment back, and then went and got with some other folks with more space, basically built like a closet or a attic type of grow room for my next grow, behind a false wall, basically. Like that was still, 20 something years ago or 20 years ago.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, I got a hold of larger grow lights, set up a separate veg space, flower space, and drying and curing space. And then was faced with like, okay, I got to track down some genetics, right? So like back in those days, you would like print out an order form from a UK seed bank, hand write your order, hand total, and send cash in an envelope, and then
Hope.
hope hope. So like 4 weeks later, some weird envelope arrives with some seeds in it. Actually, before that, I got some through a friend. So there's this like outside of Athens, Ohio, like OU is like Meigs County, and that's where like some famous Ohio stuff is from. I mean, famous to me because I'm from Ohio. Might not be famous to a lot of listeners, but like Ohio Dumpster and Death Star and Lemon G and all of that stuff is from like the Columbus or Meigs County kind of Athens area in Ohio. And I knew somebody tied into there, and they got me some New York City diesel seeds from Meigs County growers. And I grew those, and it was like incredible, but it didn't yield like at all. But it was super good. So like right away, I was like, this isn't really what I'm looking for at this point. I was trying to like put out some, you know, put out some more. And that's when I went to Dr. Chronic, I think it is. He's still around today. That store's still around today, the online shop. And I ordered Big Bang and uh, Morning Glory from Big Bang is Greenhouse Seeds, and Morning Glory is Barney's Farm. They don't sell it anymore. But at the time, it was like 3 years, 4 years after Morning Glory had won the Cannabis Cup. So I was like, okay,
Okay.
this is a good place to start. That's how I used to do my ordering. I'd look at like the Cannabis Cup winners from like 3 to 8 years prior. The idea being like, okay, they won with this. They've had however many cycles to like, inbreed or BX this, or F2, F3, F4. So to stabilize these genetics. So the idea was like, okay, if they won 5 years ago with it, then there's a good chance that that this is a stronger or more stable batch. So I
Yeah.
ended up not liking the Big Bang. Axed that, hunted a bunch of the Morning Glory and found like an absolute killer, and that became kind of like, you know, cycle after cycle, like continuous harvest, like many, many, many plants of Morning Glory for many years.
So I mean, it sounds like you were just like right onto the hunts of like looking for something that was like some awesome fucking smoke and something that you could, move, if you will. And so
Mhm.
like it sounds like you were like pretty on point early on, and you said like you went right from the little closet setup where it was kind of like, hey, my buddy needs me to do this, so on a whim I'm gonna just jump at it, and then to I'm gonna go set up a whole attic grow,
Yeah.
and like what was guiding you? Where were you getting the information to set this up, and like what were you using to sort of get you to like that level of success early on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess just like obviously I knew propagation from growing up, right? Like I learned propagation on like a professional level, and I learned large farming or scale farming, like the way it's done, outside of this new industry.
Sure.
The way it should be done, I guess, the way people have been doing it for a very long time. So I kind of had that understanding of like how things scale and how to like time things. But I gave you the shortened version of all of this, right? Like there was many times where things didn't work, or I had to try things, and then it started. Okay, everything I read says I've got to have moms, right? Like so, got this space with these big moms that are getting bark on them because they've been around for 18 months, and they're just getting all old and gnarly. And I realized, like, I did a bunch of research into genetic drift and cloning over and over again, and really came to the at least for me, in like a matter of a couple years, you're talking like cloning things over and over again, maybe 20 times. Like I never saw any drift whatsoever. I don't, not even the slightest, like at all. I know it, like environmental impacts and stuff can make things fade or whatever. Like I don't know. So I eventually got rid of mothers and just started, cloning off of my next round before it went into flip, and using those cuttings like lower branches. Um,
It almost comes across as like a healthier version of the plant over and over again, whereas like you can get this buildup of viral stress or other abiotic stressors, where the plant,
right.
if you keeping it around for 18 months, like who knows what sort of stuff is building up in the tissue there.
Totally. And with those with those plants you're vegging out to go flip, that's all like brand new,
So vigorous.
such vigorous, like awesome green, bright green, vigorous growth that like it would all clone super quickly. I actually used to clone back then directly in cocoa, like, and had no issues whatsoever. Um, I use plugs and all that stuff, but back then it was just like dip it in some gel, put it into cocoa, and it worked.
Nice.
Um, But yeah, so I mean, I gave you the fast version. I definitely went through a ton of like trial and error, and like, um, just like I said earlier, like way down the rabbit hole on Grass City forums, and just like learning. And I didn't really have people to talk to back then. You didn't really talk a lot. I see a lot of these podcasts, and most people say the same thing: is like you had your Grow Bible books, and maybe if you got a hold of some weird VHS that somebody put out way back in the day, some copy of a copy. Um, there was some stuff online, but yeah, I mean, it was all forums back then, really. It wasn't nearly as in the open, and posting pictures was even something you didn't really want to do. Like, I have almost no pictures from this time back then. I think I have one. Um, yeah,
I mean, that makes a lot of sense because 20 plus years ago, the level of illegality was almost at a pinnacle where like people were going away for unheard of amounts of time, and just being cracked down on so heavily. Uh, yeah, I mean, I totally understand wanting to just stick to what was working, right, rather than having to risk branching out and looking for someone who could teach you even just differently, not necessarily better or anything like that, just different.
yeah, there was even with genetics, like I said, once I found kind of the cut that checked everything I was looking for. It wasn't like, oh, let's play with a bunch of stuff. Like I occasionally threw stuff in. I'd get a bag seed of like I got a bag seed of some Mendo perps and grew that, and I had some crazy purple candy stuff for a while, but it wasn't as vigorous, and it was kind of like a novelty. And I would occasionally test stuff, but I had to have my like staple that was like, okay, I knew that like, the bulk of it is going through this one strain. And everything I did back then was standardized, like who it went to, like that there was really only like one person I was talking to. And it all left there and went to one person. And then I didn't care what happened after that. But like,
Sure.
it was very it tried to simplify it and make it as like rinse and repeat as possible. Um, yeah, had some issues. Definitely had some issues. I had a few scares for sure where I had to like tear the whole thing apart and ended up doing some wild stuff to try and save harvests and stuff like that. But these
Sure.
you hear these classic stories. I think one of my harvests ended up in a hunting blind drying actually because it was like we gotta clean this all out of here and get it somewhere. And it's like, where the hell do we take this? And it's like, oh, I know this spot back in the woods, like a tree fort basically. And
That's so
yeah,
funny.
I think that's
yeah,
called stoner ingenuity.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just like this something needs to happen here. I don't know what, but we need to figure out something to do with this. So
Shit, I mean,
definitely,
if it was the right time of year, cold and dry in winter or something, that would be beautiful.
yeah. It made it to harvest. It kind of. It was like 10 days early. So even though
Mm,
it dried okay, it had that look to it.
for
Like you
sure.
could you could tell it wasn't fully mature. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wh-
So yeah, that was
So
the kind of early days. Yeah.
nice. So, I mean, with all the like seeming success that you found early on, and not necessarily running into too many roadblocks that would prevent you from wanting to continue growing, what maybe were some of the setbacks that you might have faced, where you know it was part of your learning curve to like make you a better grower?
Oh yeah. All kinds of stuff, man. Like uh we were, I was running, that was like I said, that was like I was reading so much and so down the rabbit hole that I was trying everything, Like I had water filtration system hooked up to RODI, and like all the water had to go through this tiny little RODI thing that took like forever to filter water. So was like, having to like plan ahead and like filter and fill gallons and stuff like that, like way ahead of feedings to like try and get water through that. Nowadays it's like, at least in Colorado, tap water is fine. Like you can pH tap water and it's perfect. Like I mean, I don't want to say perfect. I'm sure there's a better way to do it. I'm sure some of these cultivation facilities have $1 million filtration that's better than my tap water. But back then, like that, I thought that's what you had to do. And I like read online, that's what you had to do. So like none of my plants ever saw straight tap water. It was either filtered through a filtration system or bought at the grocery store. You know, I didn't, that was definitely like early days trying to figure stuff out. So I had that going. I had a non-sealed room with CO2 going, like I had like just sucking all of it directly out of exhaust fans, like that type of thing, like calculating, you know, square footage and trying to get to like 1200 ppm of CO2 and swapping tanks out every couple of weeks and doing it all perfect and not realizing that I'm just like exhausting all of this extra CO2 directly out of the room. Same thing with like I had, it was an air cooled or whatever, like an exhausted 1,000 watt, and that was going into a carbon scrubber. But I also had some like bathroom type exhaust fans on the ceiling, just pulling air directly out of there with no carbon filter. So it's like, why does this whole block smell so strong? Like
That's
we
a funny.
we have the carbon filters going. Like, what the hell's going on here? Like, this must just be a rank strain, and it's beating the scrubbers. And it's like, no. Like looking back on some of that stuff, it's like, what the hell were we thinking? Had a sulfur burner going. I don't actually see much of that these days. Like, I bet it's used at some of the larger facilities, but you pour like powdered granular
Yeah.
sulfur. Um, it seemed to work though. I never had any issues in that grow with like any molds or I mean, I guess like very rarely like a tiny bit of bud rot or something, but like no real PM or molds or issues like that. Um, those early days, I also had zero pest issues. I mean, I think that was like the, not taking, like now everybody swaps stuff and like half the times you get pests, it's probably from your hydro store or from your medium that you're buying at your hydro store or a clone that you bought from somebody. Like if you just keep to yourself, I think that stuff kind of just stays away. Really had to deal with like none of that.
I've heard Colorado doesn't have like the worst pest pressure either, just due to
No,
there's not a lot of bugs that can overwinter up there.
correct. It's dry. It's dry and hot and arid here. And a lot of the times, like the only thing I was really dealing with here is fungus gnats. Um, and those I learned were pretty much just like coming from the medium that I was buying. So I switched mediums and I have no issues with that anymore either. So
What sort of substrate are you using with the what was it, the Floramax? Is that am I
Flora Nova, it's
Floranova?
called.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. I just use 7030 cocoa perlite
Nice.
from a local manufacturer here, Grower's Choice.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Yeah.
they don't give it to me for free though. I shouldn't even be plugging it. They should now they should give it to me for free or something. But no, I was using like Tupper before Royal Gold's
Right.
product, and
Yeah.
I'm almost positive that's where my bugs were coming from. And I've heard a lot
Really?
from I don't want to put them on blast or sound like I'm talking smack because I like the product, but
Oh, fuck it. They can
uh,
come on and defend themselves if they want.
but yeah, like I used that for so long and I like it and it was great, but I was always dealing with fungus gnats and then I would get rid of them and they would come back and I was like, what the hell's going on? And I mentioned it to the grow store guys and they were like, we've had dozens of people, switch away from that and got rid of their bug problems. So
Wow.
I did it and it happened. So I don't want to talk shit, but you know, whatever. Seems like what happened. Um, yeah, the rest of my stuff is pretty like, dude, I don't have like wizardry. I have like the lamest how I grow ever, but it
Oh, like
allows me,
run through your like just like run through your grow setup as you run it currently.
yeah. So I use Clonex gel. I use those plugs, Root Riot plugs. The only thing I've added in the last year is probably the Clonex solution for like young plants. And I will stand behind that stuff. It works fantastically because like those young plants, you're kind of like afraid to give them anything potent, right? Like you're like they hit that period where they're like, all right, they need something, but they need something mild. If I give them something too much, it's going to burn them out, or if I don't give them enough, they're going to start to consume themselves and yellow out. But that Clonex solution is like perfect for that early stage. Um, and then, I repot from there into, it depends if I'm doing seeds or clones. If I'm doing clones, I know right away what I'm doing. If I'm doing seeds, I might go into solo cups so that I can, I pop like 3 or 4 times the seeds I intend to finish, and then I call plants like every single step of the way. Like any mutations or irregularities or slow growth or anything like that, they get killed.
Do you
Um,
pop them in root riots
no, I paper towel in like plastic food containers.
and then
Um,
like right into a solo cup or something?
yep, paper
Yeah.
towel until they have tails, which like, standard 24, 72 hours, and then solo cups, and then like I said, I kind of just start calling. I start calling right away. I start calling out of the paper towels. I'm like,
For
oh,
sure.
that one's got a bigger tail than that one, or that one's fatter, that one's scrawny. Like I just right away. I mean, I guess I have that luxury because I make seeds and I have so many extra that I can do that. But um, even when I buy and I'm hunting other people's, I always pop way more than I intend to finish. And it sounds silly, and I'm sure some people would say that's ridiculous because I could be killing off a unicorn and not knowing it, but I don't know. I'll never know.
Yeah. Vigor is so huge though, and so do you pop all the seeds in a pack? Do you save one seed like some people?
Oh, geez, it depends. It depends on what my goal is for the plant. Um, if I'm like really hot on something, I'll buy more. I'll buy like a larger pack, or even if it's my own that I'm testing that I'm like really excited about, I'll pop more. But um, if it's something that's like, known to be a pretty stable pack of seeds that somebody's been selling for like years and kind of like all the pictures online look really similar and breeder write-ups, grow reports all look really similar, you might only need like three fems to get a really strong plant out of that. Um, I don't think that's the case though with most. So
No.
I do have a lot, to answer your question more directly, I do have a lot of like one seed packs sitting in my fridge that are like yeah, yeah. I popped all but one. I do. I don't know
Yeah.
why, and maybe that's a thing we all do and don't talk about it. But like,
I just talked about it in an episode I recorded recently. I was basically, we were talking about like, the philosophy behind it is like you're saving that one seed because what if it is the unicorn? And then if that's the philosophy though, then why
you
not
should be
pop
popping it. You should be
it?
popping it. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I do that. I think I do that. Um, I was looking through a bunch the other night and I saw that. I was like, oh, I have all these like single seeds laying here. And
But
funny thing is,
when
some
you
of
get
them.
around to it and you have to do those single seed runs, like it almost feels wrong unless you're doing like a batch of them.
I
Like
actually, funny enough, if you go way back on my Instagram timeline, I did a hunt that was 50 something strains or
One each.
50 something strains, one each, and just like who will survive. And it was like before I started breeding a lot more, uh, or a lot more breeding focused. But yeah, I did. I was like, well, some won't germinate and some will stink. And one of the websites, I think Attitude Seed Bank does like a mix and match where you can literally just like choose one. I just chose like 40 different ones and then took single seeds out of like other stuff I had and did this huge hunt. I don't think I don't think there was any like unicorns in that whole hunt. I had some good plants, but I had like nothing where I was like, "Oh my God, I'm keeping this forever." It was just a bunch
It's
of yeah.
I feel like there's got to be some sort of statistical analysis that can go like if you take 50 seeds of one strain and hunt it versus 50 single seeds of a bunch of different strains and hunt it, like are you more statistically guaranteed to get a better cross or like a better representation of a nice flower from the 50 of all one, or the 50 of individuals? Like
My
there's
vote is the
probably some
the 50 of
statistician
one.
that's like, oh, it's absolutely this or that. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a funny question though.
I think my vote would be the 50 of one strain.
Me
Which
too.
which I say, but it's like totally counter to how I hunt and stuff. Like because I'm such a nut for like seeing new stuff and like finding new stuff that like, my hunts are between one and six phenos, like many more seeds to begin, like many more seeds to begin, but like the actual finishing flower might only be like one to six different phenos that actually like made it through all those culling stages that I do. So yeah, like I I do want to like, and I've tried to talk to some of the larger cultivation spaces about like getting a bench of theirs or like in their in their testing rooms, um, getting 50 out there or 100 or like of some of the lines where I'm like, I've maybe lightly tested them and I'm like confident that there's craziness in there. Some of them have done it. Some of them locally I know of, and some of them in other states have like bought multiple packs of the same strain off of me to like do a bigger hunt. But it sucks. I never hear back from those people. Like I don't think they do it because it wasn't a good experience or whatever. But people just kind of like like not everybody's like us posting everything online and doing write ups on everything they test and getting the information out there. A lot of people are like, wow, this is amazing, and then they never really feed that back to the source. I really wish I got more of that. Like I
Yeah.
have the ability to write reviews on my website and like don't get many. I really wish more people would come back and like talk about their experience.
I could definitely empathize with that. I feel like it's sometimes I'll give advice out to people and I just won't even hear back from them and I'll be like, oh, I really hope that worked for you. And if it didn't, let me know as well because I can adjust. But
You want to
yeah,
hear the
it's
bad stuff too.
oh,
You like
I
need to hear.
I need the bad stuff. I don't even need the good stuff. That's just to feed my
Yeah,
ego.
right. I like that
um,
too though.
yeah, I mean, yeah. why not? Feed the ego a little bit. So, I see a lot of the flower pictures that you post on Instagram and Reddit, and like when it's the representation of one of your strains that you're putting out there, either for the first time or just showing a really nice representation of it. And so I'm curious, do you have a specific grow method for your plants that you're flowering out specifically for like glamour shots? Or are you just running seed plants in your pheno hunts, selecting them and choosing those? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, so no is the answer. Everything goes through the exact same treatment. Like my seed plants uh, will photograph really well. Like I grow the seed plants the exact same feed schedules, the exact same treatment. Um, Sometimes better probably. Like so if I it shifted over the last couple of years to where like I value my seed plants more than I value my jar plants or my smoke plants. Because other people are getting my seeds now. So like literally like say if I was in a hurry or had to go somewhere and could only water half of my plants, I would water the seed ones like and not the other ones.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I guess I mis explained what I was asking,
Okay.
but so like when I say seed plant, I should have clarified because of course as a breeder you're thinking of a plant that's been pollinated.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean like so if you're growing a plant from seed,
Okay.
are you flowering that out for your uh for the shots that you take for Instagram, or are you taking a cloning of it and
Gotcha.
flowering the clone out? And if you do, regardless of if it's from seed or from clone, what's your method for growing that out to get like those really robustly beautiful plants where you have like all the colors are really deep, the trichomes are really pronounced, the whole plant
Hmm.
has a really, really nice structure. There's a lot of turgor to it. They're all rigid and upright and not necessarily like big old floppy candy strains sometimes I feel like are like that. So yeah, like what are you
Uh,
doing there?
Everything is it's kind of the same answer though. Everything is grown like identical. So the if it's something new that I'm talking about, like if you see me posting about a plant over and over again, and I'm like, oh, I'm excited about this, that is a like hunt. Like this round of my own, I'm hunting my black lavender and lavender haze. And so those pictures are from, I typically when I'm hunting my own, what I like to do is, my packs are sold as 12. I give people 15 so they have a couple extra in case one doesn't germ or whatever. Um, and so I'll start with 15. And, with most of my seeds are regular or all up into this point are regular. So they're half and half male female, right? So you get 7 or 8 females. Um, but like I said, I'm culling the week the whole way down the line. So those pictures that you see, or like recently I've been posting those black lavenders, like those are just from seed. First time I've ever seen them. You guys are seeing them too. Um, those bud shots are just the way I grow from seed. I do have others from clone, as I mentioned, some of my like mother shelf plants, the breeder shelf that are going right now, and try to get those like really nice bud shots. I think the trick is like day 50, 55. It's like when you get that like peak. You might not get peak colors yet, but you'll get like that, that kind of like nice fluff before anything starts to like deteriorate or crinkle up or kind of get an uglier look to it. So a lot of times the best photo or the best it'll look is not the day of harvest. Sometimes it is. Some plants just stay looking beautiful, as you guys know.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just like that earlier photo will be better. But yeah, I don't do anything like no tricks, no weird feedings, no like it's just like I'm hunting stuff. It's all being treated the same. And I guess the trick is you guys will never see or hear about the losers. And I'm not talking about my own. If I have a loser in my own seeds, it would get pulled from the website and I just refund everybody or replace it with something else. So I release my new seeds untested. I germination test them, but other than that, um, for like a discounted price. And then when I internally test all of them, I put the price up. If I internally tested that and it didn't make it, I would pull it off my website and just reach out to anybody who bought it and be like, hey, what do you want? I'll give you something else. But I guess what I'm saying is like when I'm testing others, like right now I'm running a bubble gum or a bubble yum from Resin Seeds, and it's just like extremely average plant. So the only time that people heard about it on my posts is like when I post like, hey, this is what this hunt includes, in the beginning. This is what I'm doing this time. And then I just never really post it because it didn't show up or it just didn't become something noteworthy. I'm not going to breed with it. I'm not going to keep it. Um, so like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that just never makes it to nice, pretty photos because it just gets one and done. You grow it and on to the next one.
For sure. Are you like when you're doing these 15 seed hunts just to do like the testing of the pack, are you cloning them right away before you put the seed plants into flower? Or?
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a tip there or a trick that I do too. So I every single plant that I ever flower gets cloned, gets backed up, like no matter what. I have a pretty strong rule about that these days. Like I know you guys know why I do that. It's like that one that got away. We've all got that story, and eventually you're just like, I need to back up everything. But with that becomes room, room problems, right? Like you back up everything, and then you have no room for anything. It just like becomes crowded and packed. So what I started doing is, and like I posted about this online a year ago or maybe more. Some people were like, that's a great idea. Other people were like, oh, I could see that causing problems, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it doesn't. But what I do is I clone for preservation cuts at like day 9 of flower. And what happens is that has already started to trigger into flower. So it'll root, right? Like it'll root just fine. So I'll root it up and it'll root and grow like maybe one or two more nodes, and then it'll mutate out like what's the word for it? Why am I not thinking?
Monster crop?
Or it started to re-veg.
Re-veg.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word I was struggling with. So it'll start to throw single blades and do the whole re-veg funky mutation thing, and then it'll go back into normal growth. But with that, so I saved a week, right? Because I waited till day 9, or I saved a week and 2 days. And then, 10, 14 days of cloning, whatever you want to call it. So that's week. I'm already into week 3. Um, and then the re-veg slows things down. You guys know it slows things down a ton when you're re-vegging things. So that plant goes into this like really slow mutated growth. That takes like 2 weeks for the plant to come out of. So you're on to like week 5, 6 of the hunt.
And it's
And
still small.
and you've still only got this like 10-inch
Okay.
thing. And by week 6, you're starting to know what you need to keep, right? Like you're kind of like, okay, like you kind of know your winners at that point. Or at least you might not know your winners, but you know your losers, right? Like there's like you're like that one, it's got some bumpy branches, and even though it might be good smoke, I don't want to cultivate something that's so floppy, right? So yeah, you've got a 10, 14-inch plant at that point, and you already know what you're culling. So that's my pro tip on preserving stuff. A bunch of people in the comments were like, that's gonna be cause you
That
problems and blah blah blah. It doesn't.
that may be the most practical use of monster cropping I've ever heard, to
Yeah.
be fully honest. Like uh because of like space restraints, and then like you even have the potential if you get that top that sort of like can mutate from the flower node where you get a bunch of new nodes that grow out of
Yep.
it, and so you're still keeping a stout plant with lots of tops. Then that if it is nice and you want to clone it and even like send out clones to people, you're
Yep.
you're right there at the end of flower ready to do that. That's I mean that's really efficient. That's an efficient way to pheno hunt.
Yep. It's yeah, I mean I'm not gonna run out and get a plant to show you right now, but I have some that are right at like my run right now is at like day 58 or so. And I did have to top the preservation cuts or whatever we want to call them, the clones. But yeah, they're only like, 14 inches high or something. They're in 1.5 gallon pots, or they're not taking up much space at all at this point. So, but now a lot of like the time, what I'll do now is the ones I want to keep, I will take a cutting off of that one that went through that process and start a proper mom from like the beginning. Um, so yeah, that's my like that's a pro tip because everybody reaches out to me and they're like, I can't clone everything. How do I keep everything? How do you have room for that? And it's like, well, maybe I do have more room than most though. I have like 5 tents or something like that, or 5 different areas. But yeah,
What do you feel like? Do you have any other unique approaches to cultivation that maybe not a lot of other people are using, or that that you do
yeah,
find maybe just a select few are?
yeah. This isn't unique, but it's an answer to your question. I don't train anymore. Like I used to train and be like way into like doing all kinds of crazy bonsai stuff or even using like I found these like trellises that like are for tomato cage kind of, but it's like a flat top and you can put it into your pot and it's like 2 feet up, 3 feet up, and then you can like kind of have like potted trellises. And I can't do like full trellis like everybody does because I'm moving stuff around so frequently because of breeding. Like I need potted plants that I can like pick up and carry to other places and pollinate and then bring back. And so I can't do like beds or I can't do like an individual trellis. So what I've done is like when the seedlings are young and even clones, but mostly speaking about seedlings, once they get to like the fourth-ish node, I start removing all the fans. And what I've noticed is that the plant will naturally get bushier because of that light access to the lower nodes. So even without topping at that point, you already start to get this like accelerated growth on the lower branches. So my system for every seedling is like, yeah, fourth node, I start to remove all larger fans. And then by like the sixth or seventh or eighth node, I will, depending on the way the individual plant is growing, I will, then I will actually top. And then I'll wait, you know, a week or two and then flower. And I found like, dude, the time people are wasting with all these crazy tie out methods and all these crazy like they're not gaining anything because like your footprint of your light and your space didn't change, right? So like if I can fill that space by doing that with like a single topping and like a little bit of, excuse me, like um, allowing light into the lower areas by removing certain leaves, you've gone you've it's faster and at the end, I'm still taking up the same square footage of
Yep.
that plant's canopy that you did with all that training. So I don't know. I'm not saying like there's obviously places and grow techniques. I used to grow with like scrogs and like I've done all of this stuff and I love to do it because it's kind of fun. But yeah, I've found like a lot of that just slows you down and doesn't increase yields or anything like that. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of anything else like that I do that might be weird. Water I water way less frequently than most growers with my technique. I hand water and it's only like every 3 or 4 days and people always think they're like, holy shit, my cocoa dries out in 24 hours. How do you do that? And that's just a matter of pot sizing, right? Like if you didn't size your pot properly, then you're going to be drying out constantly. Like I finish in 5 gallons and the plants are sized appropriately that like I don't need to water for like 3 or 4 days. And when I do water, it's like a total flood. It's like flood the medium 20, 25, 30% drains off and kind of carries some of the waste or
Yeah.
the spent nutrients with it so you don't get any type of like salt buildups and stuff like that. And
What sort of EC are you feeding at?
uh it's a good question. It's like the last I think I did I don't test any of that because I've been doing it for so long with the same nutrients, but I
For
used to
sure.
have all of this in like my grow chart, feed charts, and it was all calculated out. I want to say I never did calculate anything dude, I made these charts 21 years ago and haven't looked at them since. So I never did it by EC. I was doing it by ppm
For
and
sure.
it was like 1100 max, 1200 max. Does that sound right? It's been like a really long time since I looked into that. So I really couldn't tell you.
Is the Florinova, is it like a powder that you just dissolve in water, or is it like a liquid?
It's a mud.
It's a
It's
mud.
like it's a liquid, but it's thick. It's you have to like shake it really aggressively.
What? How much are you adding per gallon? I'm just curious.
It's 1.5 teaspoons, I think.
Wow.
It's potent. It's like super concentrated.
I
Um,
mean, that's pretty crazy. To have something just so simple, and are you like adjusting the pH or anything with that?
I pH before I put it. I don't pH afterwards. So I've been doing the same thing for so long. It's like I pH my water, add that, and that's literally all that I do.
What do you pH your water to
I
ahead of
pH the
time?
water to 6.
Okay.
I pH the water to 6, and then that I don't go above certain amounts with that nutrient. So the water or the pH remains in that like low sixes kind
For
of
sure.
range. Yeah. It's super, like I said, there's like no
It's so
magic
simple.
or no, there's no like, it's like the most, I've been in the hydro store before and like new growers have been in there and the sales guys were like, just talk to him because they were already going to sell these new growers on Flora Nova and they were like, just ask him how he does it. Cause like, it's the lamest, most basic, like, and it's funny when you guys asked me to come on and do this, like how we grow thing, I immediately thought like, the actual how I grow in terms of like product wise is the most boring, simple thing. But for a new
Honest,
grower,
dude, that's so good for new
it's
growers, though.
so awesome. There's
To
no
hear that
messing
they
it
can
up.
pH their water to 6.0, and if it's just plain water, you can get a cheap pH meter because it's the salts that you need a nicer pH meter where the crystal isn't getting messed up, and like the different components that actually measure the water aren't getting messed up. But if it's plain water and you're just pHing that and then just boop boop, drop it
Yep,
in, stir it up, pour it on, that's
yep.
that's
The
probably
only
one of the easiest ways I've heard. And with how your flowers look and the people who listen to this, I know that there's going to be some of them that already see your stuff online.
I
Maybe they
know.
don't know that this is how you do it, and they're just going to go, "Oh my God, what am I doing with my life? This is." I feel like it because to simplify people's grows at home
Hmm.
is one of the biggest gifts for most home growers because so many people spend like an hour or more a day in their grow just to make sure that it's right. And I'm like, if I can get in and out in 5 minutes, I'm happy.
Yep. There's some drawbacks for sure. Like you cannot drip the stuff that I use. It's mud. Like it would
Oh,
clog your drippers immediately. You can't. So it's hand watering, which is good. Most new growers have a couple potted plants, keeping it simple. So, um, also, like I said, you've really got to shake the stuff because it's like it's got grit in it, like it settles,
for
and
sure.
you've got to shake it. And I use the little measurement shot glass to pour the stuff in. You can't use droppers or anything like that. Like you have to like kind of pour it. It's thick. And so there's some like drawbacks and like it's so potent that if you accidentally overdid it, like you could burn your plants probably pretty easily. I don't have that issue because I just measure everything, but yeah, it's so easy. Like I try to tell new growers all the time that this is what you should be doing. You see people with like DWC first time and stuff, and it's like you're gonna get crazy yields if you succeed, but if you mess up pHing one time or if you mess your EC up one
Yeah,
time, 4 hour window, you scorched your
you're
entire
fucked.
like your
Yeah.
whole harvest, and then you get all sad about it.
Do you not use any calcium or magnesium supplements to help compensate for the cocoa?
Nope, none. I
Wow.
have CalMag. I've like messed with it in the past. I've messed with tons of stuff in like over 20 something years of growing the same way. I've messed with like all these products that they recommend at the store, and um, every time I just end up going back to the simple. It's too easy. I know I could probably be getting bigger yields. I don't think that I'm missing out on much on like the flavor side though, or like the expression side, right? Like
Sure.
there's probably something I'm missing out on the, pumping it up side and like bulking it up, but it's not really my goal. So if I can get it to fully express like, terpenes and trichomes and flavors, and I would much prefer that over like a larger yield. So I'm not really trying to pump it up.
I mean, yeah, as a breeder, to have quality as the goal, I totally understand that it's not necessarily about, you're not looking to minimize pot size so that you can increase planting density so that you can increase yield per square foot. You're looking to
No.
get the nicest buds you can out of each plant.
Yeah,
So
on that note, I tried to do that for a while. I tried to increase plant count so I could hunt more, like as a pheno hunter, tester, breeder. Um, and I know some people do it. They like 1 gallon out, like 36, 50 plants in a 5x5 or a 4x4, and they're like, just, you cut everything off and you've got one cola and that's what you're testing and that's your proof or whatever for that pheno. I don't think that demonstrates the plant at all to me. So I tried doing that for a while and I was running these like many, many smaller plants, and you don't really get to see that plant come to maturity at all. Like you don't get to see its branch structure. You don't get to see the internode spacing. You might get to see the internode spacing on the top 5 nodes of that one cola that you're growing, but like you have no idea how the lowers branch out, if it crowns up really well, if like the branches at the beginning have 8-inch nodes and then they shrink down as you get towards the tips. Like you never get to like see it happen, I don't think. So I tried it for a little while and I went right back to like nothing smaller than 5 gallons to finish. Like I want to see the plant. It's usually like chest high or head high and 5 gallons and like a properly grown, fully mature plant. I think you're missing it if you don't do that.
for sure. And you've also said, you're not only breeding for home growers, but you're breeding to get into the cultivation space in some cases. So, like, but who is your biggest customer, I guess?
Most of it is home growers.
Yeah.
Cultivation spaces just want the clone. They just want the cut. Like
Yep.
they don't want to hunt anything. Like so, I have had conversations with a lot of them, and I've shared cuts with some of them, and like I'm not big on like making $1 zillion off of one cut, so I'll just usually give it to them as long as they keep my name on it. That's
Hey, I feel that. I
yeah.
mean, I think I have a cut of your flawless lavender that I'm gonna try and get into a cultivation space and
Oh,
get
nice.
into mass production just with your name attached to it. And you're absolutely right. I think we will pheno hunt maybe once or twice a year, and it's like maybe like I think the last time we did a pheno hunt was outdoors this last year, but it was kind of last minute and we didn't get anything from it other than the flower that we sent off for processing. And so it's like
Yeah,
it's really hard to justify. I think one of our earlier podcasts we were even talking about how pheno hunting at a commercial level is so expensive.
I heard that.
It's kind of crazy to think about it, and then how a home grower can get one pack, pop it, find something great, and if they keep it, then they can get that out to a lot more people really easily.
Yep.
And especially, but so what I was going to say though is how you're growing in the 5 gallon pot, where there are a lot of home growers growing in around that size pot, because it does cut down on the maintenance required of either having like an irrigation system or having the ability to water multiple times a day by hand. Um, I can see how that's a really good way to also show the expression of what someone might be able to experience at home. And with such a simple growing method too, it shows how easy it really can be. I'm like blown away by that. I try to keep it as simple as possible too. I do a 2 parts for veg and 2 parts for bloom, and one of those parts is shared between the two because it's just
Right.
calcium nitrate and calcium chloride mixed together. And so but the other 2 parts are just all the other macros and micros, and
Yeah.
you can keep it so simple, and then adding all this other stuff just seems to complicate things.
Is that the traditional GH line that you're talking
No, so
about?
I'm using JR Crop Tech, um,
Okay.
and that one you like buy your own calcium nitrate and calcium chloride, and they just provide the flour bag and the
Okay.
veg bag, and you just mix up your concentrates and go to town.
Yeah, I've been toying with changing. Like I said, I've tried it a bunch. There's one. I shouldn't even mention this because I can't think of the name right now. That I've been Organics Alive. I've had my eye
Yeah.
on trying. I've been thinking about trying that stuff, and I'm not plugging them because I've never tried it. But like through researching it and stuff, it seems like they've got an interesting thing going over there. So I've thought about trying that product. But
And anything that I see working at a commercial level, where I see people actually producing nice flour at a commercial level, I think that, there's there's a huge thing to say about at least the cost factor of being able to produce nice flower. Uh,
Totally.
because at scale, you're not going to find a lot of people with a 16 a 16 part mix anymore.
No.
It's not tenable with the market.
Yeah, and what I mean, what I do certainly doesn't go to scale. There's no way to use the product I use hand wa or without hand watering. So,
For sure.
um, it'd be you might be able to mix up like huge vats of it, but yeah, it's not ideal for that at all.
You have to have
Um,
like a bunch of different like strainers and shit all the way through, and
yeah, it'd be
then
a
you're probably
mess.
pulling stuff out that you're getting
Totally,
into the pot.
totally. But yeah, I mean, I'd say most of the people that reach out are home growers or maybe like caregiver size, like smaller. I have worked with a bunch of different facilities, but like I said, they usually want cuts. Some of them have bought some of them have bought packs and hunted packs, and like I've had ones here in Denver that were like starting a grow, and the start of it they did it the right way. They basically were like, excuse me, for this first run, we're dedicating all of the tables to hunting, and like to kick off the business, we are going to do a giant hunt, and then we have our own phenos that nobody else has. And I was like, this is awesome. Um, that story ends poorly. They like had a falling out, as people seem to do in this industry, and like lost all the cuts, and they're starting over and stuff. And
Oh my god.
they actually reached out to me, because one of the packs that they hunted was first Kepler 22B that I put out. I put out the F1s, and then I put out F2s, both in pretty small numbers, and they're all gone now. But yeah, they hunted it, and they were like, this was like there were like six different phenos that were like everybody's favorite, various favorites in here out of everything we hunted, all from that one pack. And they were like, we lost them all.
Oh man.
So, um, yeah, but it's, like that's F1 breeding though with those packs. So like he was like, yeah, we have some that smell like bubble gum and some that smell like medicine and some that like they had a variety, like that's one thing that I wanted to make sure to talk about like on the podcast was like what I'm breeding and what people should expect out of it too. I know the podcast is not necessarily about my breeding projects. It's mostly about how
No,
I
I mean
grow,
like
but
let's say go ahead and choose like what's like your what's your focal point in breeding right now, and what are you trying to get out to people through your breeding practices?
yeah, so the whole thing for me started a few years ago. I got back to Colorado and wanted to get into the commercial space. Wanted to purchase a commercial facility and start growing at scale. And the market's been horrible here. Like the pound price is terrible. The people are giving away spaces. So I was like, okay, well, what can I do in the meantime until there's a better market or until the time is right to enter? So I started pheno hunting. I was just like, screw it, I'm just going to test everything. So I gathered up every clone in town, ran everything, and I was like, holy smokes, I don't like any of this. It's like I had taken a few years off from cultivation, and when I came back to it 4 years ago, I was like, all right, all this stuff is so hyped up. Like this is what everybody's talking about. I got to try it. And then I tried it, and I was like, oof, like so much of it, just like so much of the hype these days. It's like really beautiful when you grow it, and then like you cure it and the flavor's gone or the high is flat or it's just like commercial, right? Like it's like good flowering, it bulky, it grows well, it's easy, but man, it like lost that magic of like the 20 years ago stuff that I started with. So,
And you have none
um,
of the older stuff that you started with?
not in seed or clone, no. I've been through
No,
too many, like I've moved around a ton and just like have have
for sure.
have never been able to like maintain. I think I have some pretty old seeds, but nothing noteworthy, no. Um,
Fair
but
enough.
but yeah, in my head I was like expecting all that stuff, like expecting the stuff that like, you open the jar and the whole house stinks or the whole whatever, the whole area is like ruined from like opening
Yeah.
one jar. I don't see that often anymore at all. So I was kind of like, okay, so I ran through all these clones and I was like, all right, I got to go back to seeds, so I can find something special. And then I started growing all these like no I'm not no shade on anybody, but like a lot of these like US and California and like these popular breeders I was finding on Instagram and stuff like that. Like I said, I'd been out of this for a while, so I didn't know who was who or
Like
back
2020 or so that you're getting back into it.
yeah, yeah. Then I got
Yeah.
back to Colorado and got back into it. Yeah, like back in the day it was, Greenhouse and Barney's and Dutch Passion and I think there were like all the UK and Amsterdam and like those were all the names. And now so I get back and I kind of start looking around and there's all these like new ones and it's all so hyped up. So I started spending a lot of money on a lot of these seeds and started. I mean, I'm not going to name any names, but it just started becoming this like aggressive mutations and like herm issues and like crazy like this one is like barely yielding anything and like I was just like what the hell is going on here like this is and it wasn't across the board. I grew some stuff that was fantastic from US popular breeders, but so I kind of was like screw it. I started ordering seeds again from the UK and from Amsterdam and kind of went back like hoping maybe they still have some of those old lines that I loved from way back in the day um and some locals here too. So the first breeding project I ever did was a local breeder. This is Colorado Seed Inc., who is now, or well, they still exist, but split off. This dude Sam up in Boulder is Free World Genetics. Project he worked on, they call it Hibiscus Sunrise. It's from like some Hawaiian sativa. Anyways, long story short, I got a male in the seeds that was like, I couldn't throw it away. I was just like, this is a monster. It just was like outgrowing everything and super strong. Looking back on it, now that I know a little bit more than I know about breeding, it probably wasn't the best male ever because like a lot of times plants that put a lot of effort into like fiber production or like hemp production, like stalk production, aren't necessarily like putting that effort that they could be putting into flower is going into like, building the frame or building like hemp fibers. So looking back, it might not have been the best thing ever, but at the time I was like blown away. It ended up being a good project for some and not for others. But I bred that to a batch of like 9 plants and tested one. It didn't test well, and I was like, damn, dude, this breeding thing's harder than I thought. So like I didn't release my first one that I thought I was gonna release. I was like, I can't put my name on that. And then I tested the next one, and it was that hibiscus sunrise male pollinated to uh, Dosidos, and it's a super cool plant. It's on my site. It's called Island Time. That's the first one that I ever put out. It like you get these like 17-inch spears, and they're like crazy rasta colors, and it's got this really pungent like tropical fruit nose to it. And it came out really good. And it grows like it's a super strong, aggressive grower. A lot of people have trouble like keeping up with it. So I get a lot of feedback that people are like, man, it's fading by like day 40 because I like can't keep up with this thing. So it is a little bit tricky or more challenging to grow, but it's a super cool plant. So that kind of kicked off the whole, and that the rest is history, as I said. Like that was the first time I made seeds, and then I was just like, wait a minute, like I really like this plant. Like, what would it be like if I combined it with this plant? And then it just went from there. But so the first 2 years or so of breeding was just a lot of like things I like combined to other things I like, right? Like this is
Sure.
something cool. Like, what is it? Is it going to be cooler if it combines with this? And the answer is not always yes. I have projects where I'm like, I combined two things and it came out fine, like the result, but it wasn't better than the parents. So you're like, I'm not going to sell these seeds. Like, who cares? You can go, like, I combined Capulators goat gas with some other plant, and I I didn't throw the seeds away. They're in my fridge or something, but I was like, I don't want to sell these. Like, just go to Capulator. The goat gas is better than this thing I made. Like, it's fine. It's good, but it didn't like make something new and interesting. So that was a lot of the beginning was just like trying to like see if two things combined to make something better than the originals. And then if you've been following me for like the last 2 years, I found a lavender plant that like completely took over my like it's like I found like the thing that I'm like, okay, like this is truly unique. It checks almost every box as a mother. Like the plant I have that I do all the breeding with, does everything perfectly except it veges a little bit slow and its growth patterns are a little irregular. Like you don't get this like uniform crown out of it. It's kind of weird. But other than that, man, it yields well. It's dripping with these like floral, beautiful terpenes, like not spicy, just like straight up flowers. I don't even know.
Have you
There's
gotten
like,
it tested before?
yeah, I got it tested and I need to do it again because I got it tested and they like messed up the test. And of
Oh no.
course, they like called me and I'm like, what's going on? It was supposed to be like a 48-hour turnaround. And then they were like, we had to send it to our other lab. Our machine's broken and blah, blah, blah. And it eventually came back and it didn't, the results came back with like nothing, nothing interesting really
Oh,
like a very like run of the mill terpene report like where I was like expecting something, like there's some magic here. I've never smelled anything like this. Everybody that I give it to, nobody's ever smelled anything like this. It's not even like other lavenders that I've smelled. And yeah, the report came back and it was like not telling of any kind of
hmm.
fun story. So I need to like run another batch and get it tested by another lab. So because I don't really trust they kind of messed with me. But
And did you find that lavender in a pack of seeds?
yeah, so I bought this was totally by accident. I had never even heard, well, I had heard of Lavender because I knew Soma's story and I knew like he was a legend and so on and so forth. But I was really excited to grow um La is it Laughing Buddha by Soma or oh no, Buddha's Sister by Soma. So I had sampled that here at a dispensary many years ago and loved it. And then I was like, you know what? Like it's always been one of those bucket list strains. You know how like you have them sitting in the back of your head that you're like, I really one day I'm gonna grow that. So I found it in a multi-pack from an online retailer in Amsterdam, and it was a Soma like anniversary multi-pack or something like that, and it came with like 7 different strains, like his Amnesia Haze and So Gouda and So Mango and uh I say Amnesia Haze, Lavender was in there and a few other things. NYCD and some others. So I get it, I grow it. I have no knowledge of lavender. I didn't know it was popular. I didn't know people cared about it. And then I started posting. I posted, here's my hunt. I'm hunting, I just got this Soma multi-pack I'm about to hunt. And all these people started commenting and messaging me like lavender, lavender, lavender. And I was like, all right, cool. Like I was like, sweet, I'll see what it is.
Yeah, it's like the
I, I
probably would have cost a couple $100 to get the same seeds.
yeah, I didn't know what to think. So I was just like, whatever. And the Buddhist or not, yeah, Buddhist sister didn't come out good at all. It was okay, but it was nothing special. And then the 2 lavenders that I finished, one was okay. It's like a lavender, like musk kind of smell, like musky. I ended up keeping that for a while, lavender one, and got rid of it. This is lavender three that I do all my breeding with. It's just like it's unbelievable. I like don't know. I want everybody to try it, but I don't know how to accomplish that without like letting that cut go, which
Yeah,
I'm
right.
not quite ready. It's just like catch 22. It's like I want you all to have
For
this,
sure.
but like I don't want anybody to have this because it's the only secret sauce that I have, or it's like my most special pheno that I hold.
Like
Um,
until you find something that beats it out, then you'll won't be such a it won't be your baby
it's
anymore.
it's coming close. It's starting to come close. Like some of the seeds that it's making are coming close to me being like, okay, I'm comfortable letting that out now because I'm seeing expressions in the seeds that are either better or close enough or whatever. Like the one plant I've been posting about lately, the black lavender, is like it it it, it dug up some genetics from the grape pupil because it's a black. I crossed my Black Canyon Kush, which has grape pupil in it, so it kind of had that color, that pinkish color. I don't know if you've seen some of my videos online. I've posted like the hues and stuff come from that, but it has pure um lavender terpenes. Like it's like almost identical, like a maybe slightly sweeter, but like almost identical to the mom. So now I have this like beautiful pink, purple, red plant. The only thing it's missing on, it's got a better structure, better growth patterns, doesn't require any support, like all of that, it's better. It's maybe it's not quite yielding as much as the main lav that I use for all of this, but if you follow me like and look on my website, you're gonna be like, dude, everything is got lavender in the name. And like I started I released chapter 1 and chapter 2 of my lavender project, and I'm about to release chapter 3 in 2 months or so. Um, I just started saying to myself, like, this is something I haven't seen in other seeds. It's totally different, like this cut that I have. And I've hunted many other lavender seeds too and haven't found this. Like I'm hunting lavender right now, literally in this hunt. I have two more from directly from Soma seeds, and they're totally different. They're like, so I don't know if that
Huh.
anniversary pack that I bought was some like vintage, I don't know when he released it. I should probably message him and ask him when that was from, if it was from a different parent. I can't find more of those multi-packs online at all. They're completely gone. I can't find any more. And but so now I have another new pack I just got of his recent lavender. I keep thinking to myself, like, okay, I'll keep, maybe there's something close to this or similar to this in more of these seeds. I found nothing like it. So yeah, I started crossing it to everything and trying to kind of bring those flavors to people, and it's been working. I mean, I get messages all the time that are like, this didn't even smell like cannabis. Like it smells like, flowers or soap or perfume or like floral incense kind of, which some people absolutely hate, by the way. Like I
Sure.
have people that reach out to me and are like, what you're doing sucks and you're stupid. And I hate it. And I'm like, yeah, well, like at least I'm not doing the same thing as everybody else is, because it seems that like most people are doing the same shit. It's like, buy a hype cut and reverse it to a bunch of other hype cuts. I don't even, you know.
Because I'm not sure if it's the same lavender, but I always remember back in like 2008, 9, 10, at some of the dispensaries in the Bay Area, there was lavender, and it was coming down from Mad Farmer up in Mendo. And I'm not sure if it's the same lavender, because then he had a bunch of lavender crosses that were like pretty well known.
Yep. Yeah, people reach out to me all the time about this, and I've researched a bunch of the other breeders that have worked with it and stuff. And I think that era you're talking about is when most people know of it from, like the 2010-ish range.
Yeah.
People will be like, "Oh, I haven't seen it since 2011 or whatever." And so I think there was a minute where it was around. From what I've gathered through my research, that lavender was spicier. Um,
It was
I,
spicy for sure.
yeah, mine's not at all.
Wow.
Like, and I have lavenders literally right now growing that are spicy and floral, and I like get it. They're kind of like mentholated. Like,
Yeah.
this is not in any way. It seems completely unrelated, to be honest with you.
We would always compare it to like Mendo Perks because we'd say that it like had a lot of that like that purple flavor. Like
Yeah,
whether or not that's even a thing, it was like just like the methylanthranolate of the grapes or the anthocyanins or whatever it was. It just like came through as this like very distinctive flavor, and so it was like a very spicy floral, but with that heavy purple tinge to it.
yeah. This is like its own thing, and I'm not just trying to like sell it or
No,
sound
no, I
sound
mean,
cool or whatever, but it's like it. I it tastes like it smells, and it makes the room smell like it smells, and it's extremely pungent when you're growing it. Like most florals kind of like wouldn't take over a room, you'd expect like a chem or a diesel or a, train wreck to take over a room smell wise, but
sure.
this floral can like take over and dominate other smells. It's such a
Make
unique experience. It's so different than everything else.
With it being that loud, it makes me think of something like a really good Jack Herrera or something, just where it's like really floral, but just also like, really loud in the room. It's just like you're gonna smell it and you're gonna know exactly what it is.
Yep. Yep. I've grown Jack a few times. I mean, we can't attest to like if it was the Jack or like, how
A
true
Jack, yeah.
yeah, I've grown a Jack. I've grown Jack seeds before. And it's not, I don't know what to compare it to. Like yeah, like I've given samples to some people, and I've given samples to, my stepdad who smokes because he has MS, and, my mom absolutely hates the smell of smoke, right? right? Like she hates the
Right.
smell. So she's always spraying the room down and opening the windows and stuff like that. And she calls me the one day and she's like, she's like, don't tell Tim, but that lavender stuff that you sent him, I love the smell of like the burnt smell of it
Yeah,
in the room. And she was like, don't tell him because like I don't want him smoking in the house. But like it's that different. It's like that different. It doesn't remind you of cannabis. It's
for
bizarre.
sure. I mean, if it's actually got a lot of the linalool in it, and it's being burnt, then like I think of like the the bundled lavender, or even like sage,
Hmm.
bundles that people will light on fire and burn, in specific ways, and
Yep.
like there's probably some nostalgia there.
To me, the smell is, so you know that like carpet powder you can sprinkle out and then vacuum up. If you
I
had a
think so.
if
Like
you had a
like a
like Arm&
whatever. Yeah,
Hammer, like
yeah,
baking
sure.
powder, and they flavor it or scent it, and then you vacuum it up, and the whole room smells good, and your carpet smells good.
Yeah.
If you had like a floral one of those, that's kind of
Okay.
what it smells like. Some people say it smells like floral incense, but it kind of does. But yeah, it's like a totally different thing. So yeah, I've the first breeding project I did with it, I outcrossed it to Max Stomper, which took a while to find a good Max Stomper breeder because that line has really, it's not a great, I don't want to say it's not a great line. It's just like not a strong line. The plants are finicky, but the flower at the end is like really beautiful. So they're like not strong plants. So I finally found like a strong male, and made a line. I released a handful of things from that male, but one of them was Flawless Lavender, which became like probably my best selling or one of my best selling things. And I kind of wish I wouldn't have named it that. I named it that at the time because I was so obsessed with this damn plant that I found that when I made that cross, I named it Flawless Lavender. And then I was like, wait, I haven't even tested these yet. I don't even know if these are good. And like now I've tested them and they are good. And it's like I attached this name Flawless to it, and I was hoping that I didn't like make come out looking like an idiot. But so anyways, that Flawless I hunted through a ton of and found a male that smelled exactly like the lavender that I like that was the mom to it. And it had the
Okay.
same kind of leaf structure. It had a better frame to it, like a little better build. And that's what I pollinated all of chapter one with. And it's been amazing. Like everything I'm finding in that and people are reporting back are getting very strong lavender expressions. It's almost as if I used a lavender male, which was the goal, right? Like it wasn't a pure lavender, but I tried to find like the most lavender that I could out of that cross. And so
Nice.
I BX'd that to the lavender, and the expressions that are coming out of that are like very, very, very much like my main one. And
Well,
then some of the other ones I did in that line, they're F1s, so you'll have variety, right? Like you're going to have variety across from both sides of the parents, but there seems to be pretty dominant floral and lavender in those plants coming through. And then the
nice.
second chapter was with Caramello, which is a different breeder's version of lavender.
Okay.
Um, and so that's all lavender as well. It's slightly different. And then now for chapter three, I reversed the main plant, and it's successfully reversed. So first time ever, I'm going to be releasing feminized seeds.
Cool.
So I'll have lavender S1, lavender times violetta, which is A seeds. It's like a PCK times purple Malawi. Um, and then I did use some other outside cuts for this one. I don't usually do that. Occasionally I'll throw one in there. But like last year, or last year, I think at the seed event in Denver, I was chatting with Capulator, and he had a jar of Pine Sol. It's like a body's Goji pheno that he found that smells just like the Pine Sol cleaner. And I was just like, holy shit, I would love to cross that to my lavender. So Capulator sent me that cut, and I pollinated that. And then one of the dispensaries here in town has like a golden goat cut that they use for
Oh,
everything.
nice.
And they just made like he's a good dude. He shares cuts with me. I share cuts with him, but he just made a new version of it. He crossed it to like cookies and cream, and so he calls it golden cookies. So I have those, and then Zombie Kush. I hunted some Zombie Kush from Ripper Seeds and pollinated that. So I think I have 5 crosses this round that are all coming out as femmes from the main Lavender breeder. So
Nice.
super stoked. Yeah, they've got like 2 more weeks to finish the seeds.
Very cool. And man, you got some really cool stuff coming down for people, especially some femmes. I'm going to move on to a few more questions here, kind of as we get
Before you
towards the
do,
end
I
of the
gotta
show.
drop. I gotta get back to real life. So
No worries, Cosmic. Thank you so much for joining us.
But hey, man, it's been awesome. General, really awesome to finally get to talk to you and everything like that.
Yeah, buddy.
And Wolf, great seeing you, and I'll catch you around. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'll see you
but
guys
talk
later.
soon. Take it easy, Cosmic.
Later, Cosmic.
See you.
Cool. Yeah. So, since you've had a little bit of interaction with both the commercial space and then a lot of interaction with home growers, what would you like to see sort of change as the next few years roll on when it comes to the cannabis community or industry as a whole?
Geez, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, I think there's a lot of us like that are have gray in our beard that are kind of like missing the loud from back in the day, for lack of a better term. Like there's the like aggressive inbreeding and the push to high THC contents has like something's been lost. It's almost like the plant can only put so much effort into one thing, right? So if you're like
Yeah.
breeding for high THC and breeding, and not just high THC, like the, that is the main goal of most of that large scale mainstream breeding has been um, high yields and high THC, right? So like we want good mass and high THC, and it's like and then people are buying things based off of marketing, right? Like they find a pheno that works for that, right? Like it has the purple hues, it yields well, it's got a high THC, it gets you super, cross-eyed, and then they market the shit out of it, and then everybody's like, oh my God, I need that. Like
Hmm.
I need the
The purple candy gas.
the Gary Payton or whatever. Yeah, the purple candy gas. And I'm not talking shit on Gary Payton. I don't even know if I've ever smoked real Gary Payton
I,
before, but
I just pulled down a room of Gary Payton and it was beautiful, but
I was gonna say that's probably like the wrong one to pick because that's probably like really good.
no, I mean, but it's all, it depends on who's growing it. And when you get like one of those like runts, let's say, out to where, there's, I don't know, maybe 100 different facilities in each legal state growing it.
Yeah.
It just saturates the market, and then you get something that's a bad example of it and turns you off to the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like those strains from the early 2000s into the 2010s and stuff. Back in the day, like stuff had to get popular because it was good, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone asked for it. It was like, okay, like every 2 weeks you get a new bag and it's something different. It's whatever's come through the pipeline, like, and then eventually something hits and the whole state is asking for it, or like the whole
Yeah.
area that got that or that batch is like, where is that? Where is more of that? How do I get more of that? And that's what drove what was grown, right? Like, it's like, oh, wait, there's a huge demand for this, therefore I can move all of it instantly at a higher price. So, I mean, I've seen a bunch of the podcasts, you hear Gabby and them and other folks that were in the New York area during the diesel days talking about that. It just became like, if you had it, you could name
Everyone
your price.
wanted it.
Everyone
Yeah.
wanted it. You could move as much as you want, name whatever number you wanted. So that's how things were chosen back in the day, was like it had to win against everything else that was put out there. And now it's winning through marketing and it being marketed because it does well in a large facility.
Yeah.
The stuff that's the best in your joints is not the same stuff that's going to do best in the commercial facility, unfortunately. Like sometimes you can hit it just right where you get you get all of that, check all the commercial boxes, and you still get an
It's still
enjoyable
really nice.
experience. Yeah, there are some, of course.
Like let's say 10% of the cultivars on the market are have that potential in them, right? You
Yep.
still have to then rotate, through a bunch more strains just because of the demand and making sure that the shelves are filled with a variety. So, and if you want to
Yep.
have enough of a market share, you got to have, 4 or 5 things on deck at any given time just to make sure that you meet that buyer's demands, because they have to fill that slot of whether it be candy or green or jack or floral or,
Totally.
and it's rough.
Yeah. So I think like that's one thing I would love to see change. I don't think it's going to. I don't really have a lot of stock in that shift happening because the way that the market is structured now doesn't really allow for the customer to tell you what they want. They think they are, right? Like they're like, I'm not trying to talk like they don't know, like the customer doesn't know what they're
They're
looking
misdirected though.
for. But yeah, exactly. They're just like aggressively marketed to.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like this thing, I've seen it everywhere. I've heard everybody talk about it. It's like, well, maybe you haven't heard everybody talk about it. You've seen a lot of marketing related to it, and it's been buzzed about because of all this marketing. And it's people spent a lot of money to get that strain name in your ear, and now you think you want it because it's been everybody talks about it. And it's like,
Yep.
well, there was a lot of work that went into getting everybody to talk about that, and there's a reason that's the case. I wish it was just like back to based on good is good, right? Like the best wins out because that's what people want. Um,
Sure.
I don't know how that happens. I think like in a mature market, we might see this end up like beer, with the craft brewers and stuff. Like it might get to that
That's my
point where
hopes.
it's got to, right? Like once there's national legalization and you're gonna have your micros and your macros and people are going to get to choose. You're going to be able to say like, okay, I want the biggest bag I can get for $100, or I want the best bag I can get for $100. I don't care how much weight it is. And um, I've always kind of been one of the latter. I've always been like, I I will pay for the top shelf, or I will go out of my way to grow the top shelf low yielding plant because it's special and interesting and unique. Um, and I think there's a lot of people that want that. I mean,
Yeah.
we have it. I don't know in your market how healthy that is, but we have it here in Colorado.
I just decided to flower out something that I'm going to need to veg for almost twice the time that it's going to take for
Yeah,
everything else. So I'm sacrificing a huge veg space just because I'm like, it it is the most beautiful fucking expression of runts or a candy that
hmm
I've seen in some time. It's a from Blockhead Buds. It's his pave runts, or a pave runts cut that he had crossed to his blueberry sugar, and it's just like this frosted out tight nug spiral, perfect little
yeah,
calyx
yeah.
stacked on each other, and it ripens all uniformly. It's
I
nice.
know his blueberry sugar well.
I love
That,
that plant too.
yeah, John here, Farmer John here in Denver grows that, and
Yeah,
um, it's good. But pave that would come from Compound Chris, right? Or
I
from
think so. I think so.
it, Compound put out all the pave stuff originally, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just a cut that he has of it. It might even be a collab between the two of them.
Oh, okay.
I honestly am so bad I don't keep up with all that. I
It's
have so much
impossible.
of a focus more on like the cultivation aspect of things, where like even that's almost impossible to keep up with everything.
It's impossible to keep up
It
on.
is.
I mean, there's so much going on right now. It's kind of cool. It gives so much variety people can choose from, and if you don't like something, like I don't understand all the animosity I see online. People talking smack about breeders or growers or cuts or whatever. There's so much anger, and it's like we have more variety than we've ever had. Like 20 years
Yeah,
ago, like I said, I had to fill out a form and send it in the mail and hope for the best. Now, like, dude, if you don't like what somebody's doing, just like go to
go
the
somewhere
next.
else. Yeah.
There's so much variety now. We're like
Well, and even
spoiled.
even with what you were saying, where you're like you miss certain varieties, it's almost like you had less to choose from, perhaps. And
Yeah,
so like when something was good, it was just gravitated towards, or heavily, it might have even been marketing of the time, just because, like you were saying, only the good stuff really survived what the market would bear, basically, like what people
right,
would be buying. And so, the good stuff, the cream rose to the top, so to speak, in a much smaller cup,
right.
and now the cup overfloweth, and so you're like,
I
you're
know.
running around from this hype to the next hype and hoping to find something, and there it's still out there, like the really good stuff, and even sometimes, depending on, if you want more variety, there's possibly even more variety now than there was, but you got to sort through a lot of pheno hunts.
There's a lot, and like it kind of, I think, and I commented on one of Gabby's posts a while ago that I think it's the end of that era of like people are like, oh, what's the next big thing? It's like I don't know if there is a next big thing. Like there's so much now that like how does one thing become the next big thing? Like Mac was one of the last big things, I think, in my opinion. Like there's just so much there now, and there's so many
Yep.
different, like for one thing to rise above every, it was like, okay, 10, 10, 12, whatever years ago, Gorilla Glue hit the market and was like on fire. It was like,
Yeah,
okay, Gorilla
went
Glue.
crazy.
Yeah, like you need Gorilla Glue. Who cares about anything else? And then, since that through the teens, there's been a bunch that have, or not a bunch, but there's been a handful like Mac and a few that have like become the next big thing. But nowadays, like what, yeah, there's popular stuff, like I said, like Gary Payton or Runts or this or that, but like those, none of those seem to be at the top of the mountain, in my opinion. Like
No.
I can't say that any one of those is like the thing to have right now.
Like I feel like you got to have lemon cherry gelato if you're in a commercial market, or at least some form of like that extreme purple candy gas,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
just it gets tedious to say over and over again. But even like where we're at the commercial spot here in Oregon, we've tried this, we've tried to go that, and we've gone for like extreme bag appeal, but with some unique terps. We've gone
Right.
for extremely potent smoke that may not necessarily be the best looking, but it's just really really tasty and really potent, and it always just comes back to like you got to like meet them in the middle and find the nicest version of
Totally.
runts or candy that you can grow out.
Yeah, I mean, for a minute there, right, a couple years ago, it might have been GMO or it might have been wedding
Yep.
cake. Those might have been like the top of the pyramid. But
Yep.
like today, I don't know that I could name a strain that, I mean, you're probably close with lemon cherry. Like that's probably one of the ones I see the most hype about and see pop up the most. But like, I never have people come in to or in conversation saying like, where do I get the lemon cherry gelato or I need
Sure.
it or anything. Like it's just popular because it's commercially popular. I don't know. It's not like being drooled over by consumers, I don't think.
No.
Maybe it is, and I'm just totally out of touch because I'm so far from your typical consumer because I cultivate, like I'm not really in the stores and stuff like
Sure.
that.
Yeah,
So
no, absolutely. That it does give you like that one step removed where like so I just went into a dispensary yesterday and I got some concentrates and I was looking through what the strain names were and I'm like, I don't know half of these and I'm
and
almost sure that some of this came from stuff that I've grown that ended up into a concentrate and none of these are the names that I sent it out with.
no, no.
So
I'll go like every other month. I'll go to this one store in Denver that has like an insane amount of deli style jars. So you can just sit in there for an hour and bother the bud tender and make them show you every jar. And I do it just to kind of like make sure I'm not missing something, like
mhm,
genetically, like make sure that like there's not something out there that's just like I need to be working with this or like
right.
this is new or this is interesting. Um, typically I'm yeah, every other
It's
jar.
all
And
like
just,
relabeled stuff
oh
that
my
you already
God.
know and
I'll
yeah.
just sit there and go runts, gelato, 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 like
Yep.
every, like it's like every jar. But um, yeah, just bringing those varieties and like getting more actual variety instead of like stated variety, right? Like people act like things are different, and then you're like, is it though? Like,
Is
is
it?
it's dessert, chunky purple, like you said, purple candy gas, or it's dessert, or
Mhm.
it may be just this like slight note difference than all this other stuff. But yeah, I go
Sure.
to these, like I go to the flower competitions here in Denver, the one at the hydro store had like 75, 76 different jars. And like, no hate to individual growers or anything, but like 50 of those were indistinguishable from one another, and then 20 of them have unique notes and looks to them. And then I don't know if I'm at the right numbers. And then 8 of them or 6 of them were like, wow, like that's special.
Like
And
either a
that's something.
great example of what they grew or just something so unique and so out of left
Yeah.
field that it was like, oh man, that's
Yeah.
nice.
These days,
Yeah.
I think you need both to stand out. I think you need
Yeah.
different unique that's also grown, you know, to its full potential.
I like
Um,
this. I like the philosophy of like doing, uh, like in food, if you do like the rule of two in one, where you do two things that are familiar and one thing that's unique or
mm,
different and something that's like novel to the experience. So, like, I like to stick with like really frosty, really purple, but then if I get some weird, like old funky, socks or
uh,
I love really good GMO that's like really purple and really frosty, but then that just like
mm,
pure funky gas, like that to me is like it hits your senses differently than what you're used to. You're like, oh, it's gonna be
totally.
purple, it's like sweet and candies, and then it's not, and you
It's
get
not.
that's like excitement almost.
Yeah, I will say, just like for anybody that watches this and is considering getting anything from me, like most of my stuff is in the more beautiful flavors or more like and not much of my stuff is in the like rotten. I don't gravitate towards that stuff much. I have a few things like my DK Stomper has like a skunky Gorilla Glue to it. You know, it's kind of like a nastier, not nastier, but it's like a funky
Sure.
smell. But I don't really gravitate towards like the rotting fruit or the stinky gym bag or like the farts or like that. I just like it's just personal preference, I guess. Like
Yeah,
it's like the way I don't look at those plants and go like, wow, I want to always have this, you know, like they're just not in the garlicky stuff. That's not really my world. It's more like I like sweets and berries and florals and like delicious kind of like smells that like you just want to keep opening it and smelling it,
for
I
sure,
guess.
for sure.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like we each have our own like things that we kind of gravitate towards, and as breeders too, like you just kind of lean in towards what you like, and otherwise you're not going to have like the exact same sort of drive to want to make it as great as you can because you're doing it for yourself in the end, and if other people like it, then like get on board because I'm trying to make what I like the best.
that's like the maybe my main point that I'd like if people take anything away from this, it's that. It's like I'm literally like doing what I like. I'm not at all looking at the market and thinking like what's gonna sell the best or what's gonna like be the most popular. Like there's so much of that out there that people can go get seeds from. Like if they want to get seeds from me, it's like very much me choosing things that I like, and some of it people are not gonna like at all. Like some of it's like that's not what it's for. Like I said, the whole journey started with me trying to find genetics because I wanted to get into like larger scale cultivation, and then I wasn't finding what I like, so I was like, I'm just going to start hunting and making things I like, and
Yep.
so literally the whole thing is for me. I don't. I don't know. I feel like that's how the best stuff's got to be made. If you're trying to like fulfill somebody else's interests or like the markets what the market wants or what you think the market wants, like I don't know. That just takes like the hey puppy. That just takes like the I don't want to sound snobby and say like art out of it, but that just takes like the creativity out of it, right? Like that's like it's not personal, it's not mine or whatever breeder's doing it at that point. They're just trying to make a product, really. They're not trying to like create something that they like. So,
Yeah, I fully agree with that. So like as a breeder, then since you get seeds to probably new growers all the time.
mhm.
What are some of like either the pitfalls or what advice would you give to new growers? Just considering how often it is that new growers are growing seeds.
Oh boy. Um, Interesting question. So new growers, if you're talking strictly genetically and like what to purchase, what the seeds to get for a new grower, I, do a good bit of research, um, and make sure that like you choose something that, well, as a new
Well,
grower,
let's take it more
every
around the let's go more the route of like growing for new growers like advice that you would give them in the garden. Let's say they already have some seeds of yours.
oh advice to actually like succeed with my seeds, or like,
Yeah, or
yeah,
like to grow in general as a new grower.
yeah. I mean, a lot of my feedback is like, so the technique that I use, we already went through earlier in the podcast about like the actual products that I use. Um, that is such a focus of everybody, and a discussion point of like, oh, what do you grow with? What's your newts? What's your medium? What's your blah blah blah? Like, what's your frequency? What's your this? What's your that? I think there's so much more, it is so much more important on like the feel side of things. It's such a bad advice, because it's like, to grow well for new growers, you have to know what you're doing, is like my advice. No, but it's like, there, if you grow simple like the way I do, like 1 part nutrients, cocoa fiber, potted, or it doesn't have to be my way, but like some very, not a lot of bottles, not a lot of products, of a pretty like clean and simple way to grow. It allows you to spend time paying attention to the plant. It allows you to spend time like reading and researching, and like maybe chatting with people online, or taking a photo of something that you're curious about, like this leaf is curling, or why is my plant droopy, or like, and so if you're not like caught up in this 30 different bottles, and a drop of this, and 4 drops of this, and 10 drops of this, and then your feed chart every other day has different cycles, and you're chasing this like crop steering, and you get caught up in all of that, and you're like missing the actual like paying attention to the plant, and like being like, okay,
I
like,
love that.
yeah, like
Yeah, like
actually,
keep it
but
simple.
yeah, it frees up your energy and your attention to like pay attention, and like, okay, what is actually occurring here. There's also this like, people think things happen way faster when they're new than they do. Like, people keep over adjusting. It's like, oh, something's wrong. The internet's telling me I need to give it more nitrogen, or CalMag. Everybody says CalMag. It's like the joke on Reddit. But
Yeah.
so okay, I gave it to CalMag. Nothing happened. Like, it's like, well, nobody in those comments unfortunately told you give it to CalMag and then wait 72 hours or something. Like
Yeah.
so there's like this people will adjust, and then they'll adjust more, and then they just end up like spiraling into this like
Hmm.
disaster. So I always like, one of the big things that I always encourage new growers to do is like, so once you've built, so say you've got your selected nutrients in your medium, and you know through research that your nutrients works with your medium, and like, that that's two things that are working together. Either use the company's feed chart and reduce it by like 20% is my recommendation, maybe even 25%, like whatever their levels are, like, give it 50 milliliters of this. I'd give it like 30. They're trying to get you to use more products so that you have to buy more products. So they basically, their feed charts and stuff typically recommend things at like the high uh, range of nominal, right? Like, you've got your nominal window, somewhere in the middle is perfect, somewhere down here is like as low as you would want to go realistically, and somewhere up here is as high as nominal as you would ever want to go without killing your plants or hurting your plants. The feed schedules from the manufacturers are going to be pretty high, because they want to sell product and use product.
Mm.
So I always tell people, like, dial that back a little bit. Start for your first grow with that manufacturer's table at like a lesser volume, or a lesser quantity. Run through it and see what happened, and then maybe make adjustments to your chart from there. But like, if you start to see things go wrong, you ever see people online, the comments are always like, oh man, uh, flush it, flush it out, and then do this. Or, like, they tell people to like flush their pots with water to like flush things out completely. That's terrible advice, in my opinion, at least cocoa wise. Like,
Yeah.
because there are no nutrients in that soil, or in that medium whatsoever. So
You
when
just
people
give it a
say like,
proper watering.
you return to nominal, right? Like, you
Yeah.
return to your charts, like you go back to what you know. So my recommendation is, if something's going wrong like that, make up maybe a slightly larger batch than you normally would, so you have more runoff. So you've kind of like, you run off whatever's imbalances in that medium in your pot, and after that runoff runs all the way through, you've kind of reset to your baseline. Never, if you have issues and you're in cocoa, you might be able to do it with soil. And I'm not a soil pro, a potted soil pro, but like, in cocoa, I see these recommendations that are like, oh, dude, you burned it. You need to flush it out. And it's like, well, you went over and now you're going to go under immediately and the plant's
Yeah.
going to start starving. So those are some
It's
points
an
that I think,
overcorrection.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So new
I
growers, I
love
think
those.
that's good stuff.
Yeah, those are great. That's great advice. Like, keeping it simple and then also not overcorrecting when you do see a problem. I feel like are huge things for like most new growers and experienced growers as well. Like the overcorrecting thing I see all the time, even in
Yeah.
commercial spaces. And but like the keeping it as simple as possible in the case of home growers, it does free your time up to pay more attention to the plants. And then even in like a larger scale, like let's say you're running a small little home grow for a profit, it helps to keep it simple because you can free your time up for other things like security or for pest prevention or
Yeah.
trimming, manicuring, all these other things that are just hyper
Yeah.
time consuming. You don't want to increase the difficulty of the simplest things like in
For like commercial and for home growers, like if you're new to it or you're trying to get better at it, obviously read and research. Like there's so much
Mhm.
information out there, but make sure you're reading the right sources. There's so much trash out there now too. And there's good and bad now. But like define I mean everybody in the industry likes to say the word SOP, which I think is hilarious. But not that I disagree with
How
it.
standard are they?
Well, yeah, it's just funny to me. It's like the I don't know. It's like people like to say it or something. It's like it gives them some kind of
It
cred,
sounds
but
smart.
it sounds smart. I use it in my day to day in my regular work
Me
life
too.
all the time. But so anyways, like you need to like do that research, learn a lot, and then determine what is nominal, right? Like for what is nominal for temperature, what is nominal for humidity at this point in my grow, what is nominal for nutrients, what is pH, all of this stuff. And then like and then the rest of it's just execution. So you're always just trying to get back to that point. Like you've
For
already
sure.
done the research, you've already done the math, you know at that point where you're trying to get to. So
Yeah.
there's like the knowledge of what am I supposed to do? And then there's like the execution of actually like achieving that. So like if you
And then
can
teaching people not to panic when they're within tolerance.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, that's why like I keep using the term nominal because that's like a window. There's like best in the middle, and then there's
Okay.
like up or down. Like it's a tolerance thing. You're
What
like
what is
okay.
that typically used in? Like what
I have a background in like electrical and electrical engineering, so
okay.
you'll say like nominal voltages or like
Okay.
like your outlets in your house are like 120 volt, but they're I think nominal is like plus or minus 4% or something like that. So like
Okay.
appliances that you plug in might actually be 117 volts, but
Sure.
the system is designed to work within a range.
Okay.
So the term is used in other things. I think it's like medical probably uses it and stuff, but
For sure.
I take it personally from the electrical world. But so anyways, yeah, it's like yeah, you've got a window, right? You've got high,
Okay.
low, and then ideal or close to ideal right in the middle.
Yeah.
So like yeah, work, study, and like come up with those numbers, and you kind of like that's right because you did all the work to come up with them, and then you don't have to second guess your plan at that point.
Just
Like you're
get it
just
in
like
check.
trying to get back
Yeah.
to that point. You're just always trying to like achieve that. It's like
It's such a
yeah,
simple thing, but it gets overly complicated very easily.
totally. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many tools now though that help with that. Like back in the day, we didn't have these home 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 growers didn't have the tools really that to do cool stuff. Like now AC Infinity coming out with all this like little tent controllers and you just set your you that
With the AI one, you can just tell it what you want it at and it just does it.
exactly.
And
But
that's
like
that's
I don't have
crazy.
that version. I've got probably the previous version.
Yeah,
And
me
you
too.
literally back to the term nominal, you literally set high temp, low temp, and it'll just cycle the fan to keep you
Hmm.
in that back in the day we didn't have all that stuff. I mean, uh commercial grows did not cannabis grows, but like commercial farming
Sure,
has
but
had
those
automation for.
controllers were so expensive and
Oh
like
yeah,
you needed to be like a engineering technician to be able
yeah,
to even handle the the UI and make sure that it was running properly. It's
Totally.
yeah,
Totally.
that's a
That
whole
those
craziness.
old industrial controls and stuff like PLCs and industrial controls used to be like you had to go get training just to work on the thing, just to
Yeah.
program the thing. Now it's all getting so clever and so
Download
simple.
an app, follow instructions, and you're good to go.
Totally. I
Yeah.
mean, we weren't even like back in the day, we weren't even talking about like VPD and stuff like that. I mean, I
No.
think that what we always used to talk about was if it's comfortable for you in the room, it's comfortable for the plant.
I still
That
go by that, and I that's how I teach. That's how I teach my cultivators. Is I if they like go into a room, I'm like, if it's uncomfortable, then like you need to realize the plants are probably feeling that too, because we're pretty darn close to
pretty
what our
similar.
comfortability level is,
Totally. They can
especially
handle a
when it
little
comes to
more heat than
transpiration,
us,
right?
but yeah.
Like yeah. Well, so I have a few like kind of last minute wrap up questions that are
Cool.
like the ubiquitous podcast questions. I just feel as though it's always appropriate.
Sure.
So what's your favorite strain of all time? Like your desert
Wow.
island strain?
If I could get one thing, I that's so hard to answer one thing. I know everybody asks this on the podcasts, and
It can be a
it's
seed line or it can be a single cultivar. Let's make it a little easier on you.
I've heard people talk about like, okay, if you give me these seeds, I could make anything from it, like, but
Right. As a
the
breeder, I mean, you have that prerogative.
the one that jumps out at me that's like a unicorn that I'm chasing for the rest of my life, I think, is that like 2003, 2004 blueberry is like
Okay. Like a DJ Short blueberry or
it
even
was, I mean,
before
it
him.
was. Who knows? At that time, you got a bag and somebody told you it was blueberry, and you're like, you open it and it's just like it smelled like a pack of like fresh blueberries picked on the farm, and there was like these silvery blue, light purple, fluffy, very crystal coated, fluffy buds, and I would kill for that putt. Like
Have
I've
you tried the
run
blueberry muffins number 4?
uh, from uh, from
Uh,
Humboldt.
yeah.
I didn't know there was a I didn't know there was a number four. I didn't know there was like a cut.
Yeah, the
I
number 4 cut is it's like pure blueberry, like artificial blueberry, but with like a cre like a pastry sort of
yeah,
baked goods essence to it. It's up there.
I have with me. I finally found a pheno in a hunt that like kind of reminds me of what I'm talking about because
Oh,
the old one did not have any pastry or
sure.
bread or cupcake. Not saying that that's not a good cut. It's probably a
No,
good cut.
no, no, no.
But like this old one was just fresh fruit, like just ripe blueberries. And it wasn't
Mm,
blueberry pie, it wasn't blueberry cupcake, it was just the fruit.
that
And
sounds so good.
it was so good. It was so good and it's so like relaxing but not a knockout, just like that anti-anxiety but still go about your day and that original when blueberry, I mean, I'm sure you look at the timeline, blueberry was supposedly around like way way before that, and some of the old heads might have different stories than me, but like early thousands was when I was getting it and when a handful of people I know and have talked to were getting it, and man, it was just like super special. It was that stuff that you were like, I'll pay whatever I need to pay to get more of this.
Nice.
So I've hunted a bunch of clones, or that's not hunting, but I've run a bunch of clones that were like said to be blueberry cuts. None of them came close. And then so I switched to seeds and I was like, all right, DJ Short used to work with Dutch Passion. So I was like, okay, I'm buying Dutch Passion seeds because they have the real cut because they worked with DJ and ran them. And it was just like one was this gigantic sativa herming all over the place. And the other one was like, it just looked like these
Wow.
seeds weren't even in the same, they didn't even look like they came from the same batch. It was
Sure.
wild. And so burned out on that. And then some DJ Short ones as well. And everybody I talked to is like not finding the terps in the DJ Short seeds anymore. Like either he's using different cuts or it's just faded or what. But so I bought some from Double O Seeds in Spain that claimed to have used the real one. And the phenos all were slow vegging, small, stout plants, like kind of like the legend of that plant is said to be, like kind of slow and ugly and leafy and And I have one that I kept and I still keep, that I've done a little bit of breeding with. I released a cut, or I released a cross of it in my last release called Blueberry Honey. That's like caramello times this plant.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't check a lot of boxes because it's slow as hell and it's kind of ugly. And I don't post photos of it because it's kind of ugly. Although it's about to hit a nice point where I might finally post a photo of this damn thing. But I'm not sure that I have what I'm looking for. Like it's the
For
closest thing
sure.
I've found. It's beautiful smelling, and like even when you crack a leaf, and smell it, like it's unbelievable. And this like berry, sweet, fresh fruit, berry, blueberry smell. But I'm still not quite sure the search is over for that one. So yeah, that's my desert island strains, the original blueberry.
Wow. I mean, yeah, to have that much effort to then be put into trying to find it, I can understand why you'd want to definitely have
Yeah.
that one
If
back.
if anybody listens to this and somehow has that cut, because everybody that says they have that cut, I haven't been impressed. Not impressed. I haven't seen the real deal.
I see.
And my circle's small, so it's probably out there. I don't know the right people, but
For sure. I mean, I know it's blueberries big in like the Pacific Northwest, so maybe someone out here will hear it and think of you.
be awesome.
Nice. All
I'll
right,
send
so
them
the
some seeds
next.
back.
Oh, there you
I'll
go.
breed with it and send them some seeds back.
Nice. All right, so the next question is, who's your favorite breeder of all time?
Uh, I always like so before I ever even grew his stuff, I always like kind of revered, and like the legend of Somo was always like kind of super cool to me. Like um even like I said way back in the day, I had never even like cultivated his stuff, but like every time I was like shopping on the banks, I was always like, oh, it sounds like he's onto something, and he sounds so interesting to me. Um, and then I've grown him out now, and I've had some success and some not success, but I did find a lavender that I've kind of gone nuts over. So yeah, I'd have to say probably him. Um, I'm definitely like, for better or worse, this kind of like doesn't say much good about me because I'm a new breeder. It's like I'm kind of more, I kind of give more clout to the old guys than the new guy. Even if you like strike gold, like you mentioned, who is Blackhead earlier with his Blackberry and Super Boof and the Blueberry Sugar. He's putting out like super cool stuff, and like his name's obviously going around, and huge kudos to him. But like it's still just kind of like the OGs from Amsterdam and um, you know, different parts of Europe and Dutch seeds and stuff like that. I don't know a lot of those guys' names. I don't know them personally. I know the brands and stuff, but
Yeah.
I'd say that's where I lean towards. And I still keep going to those seeds and to those companies over there in Spain and the UK and Amsterdam and stuff, and just keep running those. And I keep finding like really loud stuff, like really interesting loud stuff. I don't know. There seems to be, I see people online like talking smack about Dutch genetics and stuff now, and I'm like, man, that's where most of this all came from, like way back in the day. Like that's where most of this breeding originated from. I mean, there's always California goes way back too. I'm not trying to
Sure.
take anything out of
There's a
like
there's a
that.
level of professionalism to Dutch breeding though that wasn't really seen elsewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It seemed like a lot of the U.S. breeding, Cali, and a lot of those cuts that got popular in the U.S. back in the day were like some bad seed or some had some weird story. Trainwreck was found in a train car, or so it was like some bizarre story, and then like or all the legends of Diesel and stuff. Although it seems like some of those the real stories have come out now, and chems and all of this stuff. Like a lot of it came from like one bag seed because back in the day that's what we had, right? Like that's
Yeah.
like we didn't have access to huge genetic libraries, whereas like you said, the Dutch had programmatic breeding back in the day. Like they were sifting through like shitty plants for generations and generations
Hmm.
to come out with these things that can
Like true
cultivate in a
F1 hybrids and
totally
yeah.
like not much naturally occurring stuff you're going to want to throw in your closet. It's like there's
No.
very few, maybe some of the Afghan stuff you can just throw in your closet, but a lot of work and a lot of generational breeding and selective breeding went into like making that happen. And I think a lot of that happened, the Dutch did a lot of that. So
Yep,
I think a lot of those OG breeders are where I kind of like have the most reverence.
for sure. That makes a lot of sense. So this will be the last question of the little short questions. What was your most, or what is your most memorable cannabis related experience?
Oh man, I feel like I've seen you ask this before. I should have been prepared for this. Um, how about this? Maybe I'll tell my first time story I can't.
That's great
Yeah,
because I didn't touch on that, so that can just be
yeah,
like,
yeah.
because it's usually one of the most memorable
I
experiences.
definitely remember it. I remember the first two.
Okay, yeah, let's hit it. Let's
So
hear
the
it.
first time I was just hanging out with a bunch of friends, and they had all smoked before, and this was probably, Mexican brick back in the day. And I just remember like I couldn't figure out the carb right on like a bowl, so they like packed a bowl for me, and I'm like, I'm doing what you're doing, and I was like arguing with them, and they were like no, and they eventually had to like hold the lighter for me and just say like, inhale or whatever. And so I remember kind of like sitting there in a chair in my buddy's basement, just like I couldn't tell if I was like talking myself into feeling something or if I actually felt something, like
For
I
sure.
in my head I was like, oh, my feet are tingling, and then it's like, but are my feet tingling, or am I just sitting in a chair? Like I don't know. So my first time was pretty like I was definitely a square, like I didn't like just pick up a bong and take a big rip and know what I was doing or something. I was like a total like square trying to figure it out. And then the next time, somebody gave me like a small bag of some Mexican brick, and me and a buddy went out in his car and like drove around the block and parked and like made a tinfoil bowl and like just hotboxed his car with tinfoil and Mexican bricks. Like sitting there, we were probably listening to the Police or something. The dude was a big fan of the Police, but and just like I think that second time was the first time for better or worse. It was tinfoil and swag. I got like really high though. I was like, you know, eyes squinting and like definitely giggling and experienced the whole thing. But what I wish I did remember, because this was probably would be a good answer, is like the first time I had like Kind Bud, like back in the day, the good stuff, it usually didn't have a strain name attached to it. It was just Kind Bud when you got something really
Sure.
good. And yeah, I think there was one strain in particular coming up that it was called Beauty and the Beast, and whoever was doing it was very, very good at cultivation. Like this was very loud, very potent, very expensive, and only came around every few months. Like now that
Sure.
I grow, I know harvest cycles and I kind of know why it
Mm-hmm.
was coming around every couple of months. And you
It
had to
just sold
like,
out quick.
oh, you had to know the person, you had to know somebody. And I don't even know who Beauty and the like it's on Seed Finder, but I don't even know if that's the real Beauty and the Beast. Like it says it's like a C99 cross, but
Hmm.
it didn't look like it yielded well. It was like golf balls, and like, but man, it was like an event every time you could get your hands on that.
Wow.
So, um, oh, I've got a good story for you. So this was probably what I should have answered with to begin with. So I mentioned that strain was called Morning Glory that I had kind of like cycled through a lot of for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I came up, and I'm like from Cleveland originally. You could see it on my hat, but I it eventually made its way into the hands of some rappers, some like local rappers in Cleveland, and not that I wasn't connected to them at all. It was like totally secondhand. Um, but I got like one day I got like a voicemail on my phone. I was on vacation in Baltimore or something, and I listened to the voicemail, and it's two people rapping, and I'm like, I kind of I kind of had an idea who it was, but I was like kind of freaked out. They were like rapping about the morning glory and stuff and about the weed, and I was like, paranoid grower. So I like deleted the message. I eventually like talked to the guy that knew them, and I was like, dude, what was that? Like, why did I get a random rapping voicemail on my phone? And it turns out that it was Kid Cudi and a Cleveland or an Ohio rapper called Chip the Ripper. They rapped together a bunch. Obviously, I'm sure you've heard of Kid Cudi, or I mean, you should have.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're But we're kind of the same age and from the same town, and they eventually got a hold of it. But they still, to this day, Kid Cudi and Chip the Ripper, when they collaborate, or you'll hear them yell it on songs sometimes on intros, they'll say Almighty Glorious. They named, when they collaborate, they named their collaboration Almighty Glorious after Morning Glory, the strain that I was growing. So
Wow.
they're like
And was it
literally,
what you were growing that they were smoking?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was the only, yeah, it was my stuff that they got a hold of, and
Okay.
it was Morning Glory. So they must have been, I can only imagine, they must have been having a session, smoking it and hanging out, and they were like, asked the dude that brought it to them, like, what is this stuff? And it said Morning Glory, and they were like, we are the Almighty Glorious or something. I don't know how it all came to be, but literally, the Kid Cudi's album from last year, like him and Chip are like yelling about that stuff in there, and
Nice.
I I met Chip a couple months ago and talked to him about it and stuff, and he told the exact same story. So I was like, okay, that's kind of an interesting like weed story.
What do you think when you told him you were the guy that grew it?
So I messaged him 2 or 3 years ago on Instagram and said like, hey, you remember that stuff back in the day? Like that was me or whatever. And he was just like, typing all this shit to me, like, "Oh my God, you're the world's greatest man." Blah blah blah. It was like, I gotta shake your hand, man. And
Nice,
so I
nice.
kind of like, it was cool because I had never actually come out to talk to them or attempted to
Hmm.
like say it was me. And all these years later, you can do that now. Um, but yeah, I talked to Chip and I was like, "Hey man, I want to breed something for you, breed a strain." And so we've kind of like, we don't have like any business plans or anything like that, but I've kind of like in the back of my head been like, man, I need to like send him a bunch of jars of phenos, have him pick something, get a name to it, maybe release some seeds under that name, and then maybe find he's like, he says he knows, he's in LA. He's like, I know some cultivators down here that'll cultivate it for, with my name on it and stuff like that.
Nice.
So we've talked about it, but I haven't really like, I need to put the effort in to actually like make it happen and send him
That'd be
some jars.
pretty cool.
I gave him a bunch of jars when I met him a couple months ago, but I need to, they were just what I had on hand at the time. It wasn't like a attempt to come up with a strain or anything. So
For sure. Well,
yeah, buddy,
that's a great story, and yeah, I think that's a great place to end it on as well. So
for sure.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining myself and Cosmic earlier, and coming on and telling your story. Do you have any shout outs or any plugs that you want to do here at the end?
I should have thought about this. No, you kind of mentioned it already at the beginning. Sugarship.co is where you can find stuff about or information about my product. I'm super responsive on Instagram. If people have questions, I love talking to growers and love giving advice. People are like, "What should I buy?" And it's a hard question to answer. It's like, well, what do you like? But I am super responsive talking to people. So feel free to reach out to me, dk.warren on Instagram. My Reddit name's a little harder to remember, but you shouted that out too. So
Yeah.
no, other than that, man, like this whole thing that you guys do is awesome. The craft stuff that's come together, the uh, the Reddit page, the craft marijuana. Is it craft marijuana?
Yeah, craft
I
marijuana.
always say craft cannabis in my head, but is craft
I think
marijuana?
that one was just taken.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean that's where I met you guys, and a lot of people have come together, and like that posting on that as like kind of a new age forum has been really cool. But yeah, super cool what you guys are doing here.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, and yeah, take care.
Later, buddy.
Later.